Hey, Diana, did you know that one system could totally change how you operate your firm?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm owners about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I'm your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my co-host, Diana Berry, my right hand, my COO. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Hey, Mark, not much. Still kind of reeling from our 2-day annual.
Yes, so we just got through with our 2-day annual retreat, our EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System retreat. We spent 2 days down in Galveston with Christine Spray, our implementer, and our leadership team. And I would say day one, we did a lot of trust building, team building, sort of the kumbaya type stuff.
That Mark loves.
That I love. Oh, I thought it was great. I had a great time. And then day two was more nuts and bolts. I like, what the hell are you going to do about it all? You know, what's the plan?
Definitely Mark's forte.
Yes, day two is where I shined. I know it. Towards the afternoon of day two, everybody seemed to be fading except for me. I was getting all jazzed up. I was like, we could go another 5 hours.
Yep, and I was definitely like, nope, I'm done. I'm done. That's okay, though. So I think that was actually the impetus, the ending of that meeting was the impetus for today's podcast.
Right. What are we talking about today, Diana, since you're in charge?
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were going to admit that I was in charge, Mark.
You're in charge today.
Well, today we're going to be talking about our EOS journey. So basically we are officially a year into our EOS journey. So thought we'd be able to have kind of a personal, insightful, introspective look back on what that's done for our firm, why you decided to do it, those types of things, maybe things you wish you had known before. And you know what, if our listener stay to the very end, maybe things that EOS hasn't done for us.
I know.
So all of that, but let's start from the beginning and set the foundation. Mark, what is EOS in your own words?
Okay, so EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it is a system, what I would call a habit system, designed to take small businesses to the next level. Okay, and it involves basically developing a leadership team and a leadership infrastructure, and it involves creating a communication system in order to communicate ideas down throughout the firm. Lots of elements to it. Obviously, planning. It has a systematized way of creating a purpose, a vision, your 5-year plan, your 3-year plan, your 1-year plan, your quarterly, what they call ROCs, which are your quarterly goals that all feed back to, when you reverse engineer things. So now it feeds back to the 1-year plan, which feeds off the 3-year plan, which feeds off the 5-year plan. And they use slightly different terminology. I'm just, these are my simplistic, caveman way of explaining things. But the whole idea behind it is that you need to get all of your oars rowing in the same direction and in a systemic sort of regular way. So there's lots of elements to it that I'm sure we'll unpack here over the next 45 minutes or so.
Exactly. So I think you said it best when you said that it's designed to kind of get you to that next level, but also designed to get the oars all going in the right direction for you to be able to get to that next level. Yeah. So it's been popularized, as I'm sure all of our listeners know, because we talk about this a lot. Gino Wickman book Traction. So it's a great resource for you if you want to start there. But since we've already covered those in podcasts, this is more a how did we do it at Marc Whitehead Associates, as well as kind of things we've learned, our lessons learned, and those types of things.
Yeah.
And so I think that the beauty of EOS is the simplicity of its tools, because you were already doing all of these things. We already had a meeting cadence. We had a scorecard. We had all the different things in the firm, but EOS truly did take us to another level. You had a vision, you had a purpose, you had all of these things that, and we just got a chance to really, core values, we got a chance to really relook at them with our current management team.
Right.
And just for the next stage of the firm. So we decided, Marc, to use an implementer to help us with kind of kicking off EOS. Why did you decide to use an implementer? Because not everybody does. And what were you looking for in an implementer?
Right. All right. So backing up slightly. So I want to say in probably about 2019, I took advantage of the free 90-minute meeting that EOS offers, and they will offer to anybody out there. So there's, hey, this doesn't cost you a thing. And they will come, one of their implementers will come and give you a nice presentation of about 90 minutes and answer all your questions, like this is what the system is. Okay. So I took advantage of that in 2019, and I cannot remember the name of the implementer who came. Seemed like a very nice person. And, you know, obviously this is the system, and obviously all of this costs money. None of this is free. It is a for-profit business out there. And at the time, I chose not to do it because I was involved, I was involved heavily in Atticus. I, had a brand new coach that I was working with. All of those things themselves cost money. And so I made sort of a decision based on time and budget that I did not want to add one more thing into sort of our leadership mix, into our coaching mix. I just thought it would be a little bit complicated. And then guess what happened next year?
Oh, yeah. I guess that was 2019.
That was 2019.
Yeah.
So 2020 hits, and it hits you like a slap in the face, and just bam. And, it was kind of chaotic. And you came on in 2020, and everything sort of changed in 2020. And honestly, that's really, I think, was really the impetus right there, because one of the keys to the EOS system is the visionary and integrator dynamic, with basically the number one and the number two in the organization. The visionary is the visionary, and the integrator is, the person who executes on the vision. And that's coached a lot through the EOS system. And at the time in 2019, I didn't have an implementer, I didn't have an integrator. I didn't have you. I didn't have a number two. I had attorneys, but they are all off in their own quest for doing whatever they're doing. None of them had the time to be the number two to run operations. So that was one of the reasons that I kind of passed on EOS the first time, because I didn't have that number two. I didn't have you. Well, guess what? You showed up in 2020.
I did. Yeah.
So you showed up in 2020, and, we moved on through, and I got you integrated into Atticus, and a few other things that we were doing. So I started to revisit the idea of EOS. In 2023, we started talking about it.
Yep.
And I think we finally met with our current implementer, Christine Spray. I think we met with her somewhere in the fall of 2023.
Correct.
So we re-got the 90-minute orientation, the pitch, whatever you want to call it. But this time it was somebody different. And I remember we researched looking for an implementer. Number one, had a few criteria. Number one, they had to be local. I was determined that we were going to be off-site. I did not want to do it in the office. I said, we need to get out of the office. You need to get away from all the distractions of the office. We certainly weren't going to do it virtually. I was, at that point, just about to vomit on all the virtual stuff that we were doing. And we found Christine, and Christine has lots of experience, both in terms of EOS and in terms of Vistage, which is a different program for entrepreneurs. But I think in my mind, it felt like it gave me a well-rounded implementer. I think so that's the key. So your original question, which I just got off topic of, was why did we choose to get an implementer as opposed to doing it ourselves? Because there is a do-it-yourself version of EOS. I strongly believe that you need a neutral third party, a neutral, fresh set of eyes on your problems. Somebody that has experience, somebody that can look under the hood, and has some perspective. Christine has coached, she never said how many, but I'm going to assume she's coached dozens, if not hundreds, of different businesses. So she's seen under the hood. She's coached other law firms. She's coached other types of businesses. So I think having a neutral set of eyes that doesn't have an agenda is critical to making the system work. And I would highly advise, getting a third-party implementer that's not within your firm, if you can possibly afford it. And yeah, they're not cheap. They're not cheap. And, I physically made a decision. We had coached a while with our coach, and I just decided that, we were kind of coming to the end of that coaching relationship. It was kind of becoming repetitive. And so basically, I solved the budgetary issue by just replacing our coach with EOS. And quite frankly, if you annualize it out, they cost about the same thing. So that was sort of my process and sort of my thought process. And I don't regret it. I think it was a wise decision. I think we found a good implementer. She can be tough on us. We're talking about this pre-recording that Christine was kind of tough on us.
Us specifically.
Yeah, us, you and me.
Two of us, yeah.
Like you and me got hammered at the 2-day. I think we both took it a little bit differently. I'm kind of like water off a duck's back, and you kind of took it more personally, which...
My name is not on the building, sir. I literally did not sign the check that made that 2-day possible.
You know what? And I'm used
a different perspective.
And I'm used to taking criticism and taking the bullets. I accept that as part of my job. Is when the buck stops here, when things screw up, it's my fault. I say that all the time. And
that was the takeaway, right? We had really no one else to look at when we looked around the room. Like, well, yep, leadership is always about, leaders, and so.
So that was a really long-winded answer to tell you about my journey on EOS and why I kind of came to that decision. But of course, we came to it as a mutual thing. I relied heavily on you to kind of. At every step of the way, I wouldn't have made any of these decisions without you being on board with it.
Yep, and I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that in our next segment. I do think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you won't hesitate. I think when we were discussing EOS vis-a-vis other options or just, where you were going to grow the firm, you were just ready for that next level. You were looking to, you had doubled your revenue through Atticus. You had done that programs, and there's nothing wrong with it, but you were looking for something else to take to the firm to the next level, and EOS seemed to be that solution.
So a lot of things that we do, will tend to run their course, and EOS is going to run its course. As a matter of fact, EOS is designed to only be a 2-year program.
2-year implementation.
2-year implementation, rather. For all of the great things I've said about Atticus, the returns diminish over time because, at some point you get it down.
Well, you've been doing it for 15 years.
15 years. Yes. So it's not like we don't learn stuff every time we go to Atticus, but we don't learn as much. It's not like drinking out of a fire hose like it used to be.
Yeah.
Now it's more drinking out of a water fountain.
Whereas I leave with all kinds of notes, and you're just like, "What are you doing
over
there?"
Well, I've heard it before.
Exactly. So it is different for me.
And the same thing with coaching. We coached with our coach for a while, and then it kind of ran its course. And at some point, you kind of run out of things to say, so you have to start looking for new voices. And I think that we were at the point where we needed to hear some new voices.
Yep. And I think that's definitely taken us to the next level. And so we're going to wrap up this segment. We will do, listeners, a future podcast on EOS tools. So that's not going to be this podcast because that one will probably be more nuts and bolts and tactical. But this podcast is really going to be about our own journey and hopefully be for those of you who may be on the fence about starting your own EOS journey, or maybe even wondering whether or not your experience was unique to you. So we'll be back.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back to talking about our EOS journey.
All right. See, you just get all excited when I let you do the cue in.
I know. I've lost my train of thought.
You lost your train of thought when you...
All this power is going through my head, Mark, or to my head. So,
speaking of power...
Oh, I did that on purpose.
I know. Okay, so I have to, should have done this in the first segment, but I just totally slipped my mind. Give a plug for my friend Ruby Powers and her podcast, Power Up Your Practice. I was a guest on that last week, and I know the timing's a little off. Ruby kind of like records her podcast and then immediately pumps them out. We are usually on about a 3-week delay. So yes. My plug is going to be well behind my episode that's coming out. But so Ruby and I spent a good long conversation talking about the development of practice, about, I think we mentioned something about business development, how we got into coaching, all of this fun stuff. But Ruby has a really great podcast, again, called Power Up Your Practice. We love the name entendres. So. Anyway, find it at your favorite podcast, Ruby Powers, Power Up Your Practice. But anyway, she does a very similar podcast to what we do, which is she deals with law firm marketing management type issues.
Okay.
Although she's more of a guest format as opposed to us. Mm-hmm. You know, we're afraid of guests. We're afraid they'll come in and say, rude things to us and challenge us on our stupid ideas. But
oh, that's okay. That's what you have me for, Mark.
Oh, and final plug, we're getting on a plane today.
We are.
To go to PILMA, Personal Injury Lawyer Marketing and Management Association.
The Super Summit.
The Super Summit, the name that never quits, PILMA. I'm like, just how did this name ever happen? But anyway, we're going to Denver. So next week when we get back, we'll probably give you a lowdown of the top things that we learned at PILMA. So you better be taking a list.
Yes, sir. I will take a lot of notes.
Okay. All right. But back to the subject at hand, EOS.
Yes. EOS. So first question out of the gate, Mark. What was your biggest surprise from EOS over the last year?
Oh, biggest surprise. That may be kind of tough. Honestly, I was kind of surprised how well my leadership team took to it. I thought it would be more of a foreign concept to them, that they would sort of resist. Mm-hmm. That was my fear, because it is very structured, whereas some of my people on my leadership team tend to be more free form, if we want to put this politely, and I wasn't sure how they would react to the structure. Now, the flip to that, I was a little surprised how the people on my leadership team that really do like structure were a little bit resistant to it.
Really?
Because I think they felt like it was taking up some of their time.
That is a big thing. Yeah.
So the reactions I got from my leadership team kind of surprised me. And I think what it was is those people who did not have as much structure embraced the structure. Maybe that was something they were looking for, even they didn't realize they were looking for it. And the people who already had the structure were a little bit like, I already got this. Why aren't we doing this? So maybe that's what surprised me, was their reaction to it.
Yep. So from my perspective, I was surprised at how well the team, like not our leadership team, but the rest of the teams took to the level 10s. So this is not obviously a podcast about the EOS tools, but just for introduction, a level 10 meeting in EOS speak is a 60 to 90-minute meeting that follows a very specific agenda, happens at the same time every week, and it by its own agenda, it just encourages accountability in a way that we were never really able to get, even though we had a regular meeting cadence. Everybody had a huddle or a time that they met with their teams, but just there is something about the level 10 meeting agenda that encourages accountability.
So level 10s do a couple of things. Number one, they create a cadence of accountability. They create a very precise structure. Once you get your level 10 meeting developed, particularly the scorecard part of it, it gives you a lot of key insight on a weekly basis. So everybody's on the same page. So it keeps everybody on the same page. And like you said, it creates accountability because everybody owns, the rocks, and the rocks are either moving forward or they're not. And only one person owns the rock. So if that rock is not moving forward, you're looking straight at the person who owns it.
Yeah.
You didn't do what you were supposed to do this week.
Yeah. And it can definitely get uncomfortable when that percentage stays the same.
Right. So just for all of these things, structure, accountability, a cadence,
But it did add, like I said, you had these things in place already, like many law firms do. And so when we added in another meeting to their weekly schedule, I think a lot of the teams were like, oh gosh, here we go again. Marc and Diana went to some conference and they brought back something that we're going to all now have to implement. There was a lot of not eye rolling, but skepticism, I think, about like, how am I going to fit this meeting into everything else that I already do? And now because I, as the integrator, I sit in on each of the departmental meetings every quarter. And I'm always surprised. Everyone I think seems to enjoy that time with the rest of their teammates. But also just, they don't mind being held accountable.
Well, for one thing, it eliminated some other meetings.
It absolutely did. Yeah. We didn't keep the same meeting cadence we had before EOS.
And in a level 10 meeting, the structure is what makes it, because everybody knows the structure, and they see at the end of the meeting that something was actually accomplished. I don't think people hate meetings. People hate meetings that waste time.
Yeah, but they don't have a point.
Yeah, they don't have a point to them. But every level 10 meeting has a very defined point and very defined structure, and you leave that meeting knowing exactly where you stand and what needs to be done.
Yep. So, follow-up question. Well, did you ever have a moment throughout this last year when you really were like, yes, EOS is working for this firm?
What I realized, and I did not realize this until we established what I would call the sub-level 10s, the departmental level level 10s, was that one of the problems that we had, and I've discussed this on the podcast in the past, was that I would go to a seminar, or you and I would go to Atticus or something like that, and we would come back with these great ideas, but we didn't have an effective mechanism to disseminate these ideas and these changes that we wanted to implement down to the lower levels of the firm. Mm-hmm. There just wasn't a mechanism for it. It was ad hoc at best. And it probably felt to our staff that they were just scattershot. They were just, oh crap, they've been in another conference.
Yes.
So with the EOS system, and particularly with the sub-level or department level 10 meetings, we've created a process to where, the vision and the purpose and the plan can get disseminated, evenly throughout the firm.
Absolutely. And I think that, there's even with a scorecard, you get to see, we review the departmental scorecards just quickly. I know that's not true EOS, but at the big level 10, just so that we can always just know what's happening. I think it makes you feel better and gives you a pulse on how each department is.
Right.
So it's really, truly closing the loop every week.
And everybody sees the same thing. So everybody knows every week whether we're winning or losing. That's what a scoreboard is all about. Are you winning? Are you losing? What's up?
So then what do you think's been the firm's biggest win from EOS?
Ooh, see, you're throwing me these curveballs that I haven't thought about. Did you send me this outline? Oh, yeah, you did, didn't
I
you?
did,
forgot.
absolutely.
Yeah, I know I scanned
Well, here, do you
it.
want me to go first?
Yes, you go first.
So I would say that, and I've said this to you a couple of times recently, I would say that the firm's kind of in that fairy tale part of the flywheel where it's got its own momentum. And I credit a lot of EOS to that. You know, we read Flywheel. We talked about, what is it, a monolith? Is that what we said that it was? But anyway, we read Flywheel with the attorneys.
A monograph.
Monograph.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. No,
All right,
thank you.
I was like,
Monolith
what the
is a
hell are you
different
talking about, a
word.
monolith? Are we going 2001 Space Odyssey? What the hell?
Monolith is absolutely not the right word. I'm going to Google that on the break. But thank you, monograph. And we read it with the attorneys, and we had them create their own little flywheel, and it was just very, I'd say, cerebral, just amorphous, not very
Those are
concrete
such
at
big
all.
words. I'm going to have to Google all those.
Well, but it wasn't concrete for them. But I think now with EOS, we had a great revenue in Q1. All the teams just seem to be working at a really great rhythm. It's had us put structure into place that's just really great. Delegate and elevate with the tools. And it just really, we're kind of in that great part of the flywheel where it's just kind of taken off and it's building its own steam. And I credit a lot of that to EOS.
Yeah. All right. So repeat your question just so I can.
What do you think's been the firm's biggest win from EOS?
I would say the issue processing part.
Okay.
So part of a level 10 meeting at the end is issue processing. So in other words, you don't leave issues hanging. If there's an issue, you deal with it right then. You IDS it. So you identify, you help me with the IDS. I know what IDS means, but I can't tell you what the acronym is.
Yeah, identify, discuss, and solve.
Yeah. Every issue, every week is identified, it is discussed, and it is solved. And there's even a process for how this works. But the point is you don't have lingering issues hanging on. Mm-hmm. Not supposed to anyway, if you're doing it right. So I think a combination of the IDS and the accountability factor. So everything has a name assigned to it. Nothing's amorphous like, hey, the intake team is supposed to do this. No, a certain specific person is supposed to do this. Now they may get the intake team involved with it to help them, but there's one person who owns the rock or one person who owns a to-do, and that creates accountability. If it's done, it's that one person's, goat or glory.
Yep. So I struggle with IDS with that just because it can be that's the tough part.
It is the sort of the most taxing part.
It's 60 minutes of our 90-minute agenda, I believe,
right,
if I remember it correctly. So it's definitely the guts, and of course it can be the most tension-filled. So final question for this segment, Marc. Is there anything you thought EOS would fix immediately, but it turned out that it was going to be either slower or harder?
So I would say the interpersonal relationships, the trust factor. There's always trust factors on teams. There's always the issue, with how personalities mesh. And it has been a process. It hasn't solved that issue overnight. I would say that it has gotten substantially better. But trust is earned. You can't just, there's no such thing as a trust fall where, you do that whole rigmarole and you catch them and like, all right, now I trust you forever and ever.
Yeah.
No, that's not really how that trust works. It has to be earned over time. So that's, an issue that is always going to be ongoing, I think. And of course, the leadership team has changed somewhat, in our tenure. We had one person come in, one person leave. So that throws a new dynamic into it every time something like that happens. So I would say that would be the one thing that we're still working on. That's a work in progress.
I think that's going to be a great segue to kind of the things that EOS didn't do for us, which we'll discuss in our next segment.
I'm Marc Whitehead, a lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks so much for tuning into the Successful Barrister podcast.
We have a blast creating it,
and I hope you find it helpful. If our chats have sparked your interest, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. That's Marc spelled with a C. Enjoying the Successful Barrister newsletter. Even better, let's hop on a call. I'd love to chat about how we can collaborate, share ideas, or just catch up.
So I guess in our final segment, Mark, really kind of looking forward to what we have in the next year for EOS, but touching on the last question from the last segment. So what has EOS not done for us? Asked and answered?
I don't know that it's asked and answered.
Okay, go for it.
It's always an ongoing process. Always asked and answered from me.
Yeah.
So what I would like to see us work for. So one of the things that's part of the EOS system is your leadership team is supposed to have, quarterly gatherings where we have just an outside activity.
Trust builders.
A trust builder. We do things together, but a lot of times they get muddled in with other stuff. Like we all go to AAJ in the summer together, which is great, and we do spend a lot of time together there, but it's got a different agenda. Mm-hmm. It's not about creating camaraderie and trust. It's about like, hey, let's go do AAJ and do what we're supposed to do. So I think that's one of the things that I believe, is a useful tool that we will be using more and more and more. And I think we probably ought to get back to it a little bit more. And I will say that I've probably been one of the impediments to that, just because of my busy schedule. People are always complaining they can't get me on their calendar because I'm always busy.
Yep. We've talked about that on this podcast.
Yes. So that was actually laid out very bare to me when we did one of the exercises at the 2-day, which is, what would you like Marc to start or stop doing? So
that was a good exercise.
Yes. So the theme on what they would like Marc to start doing was to spend more time with them. Mm-hmm. In other words, be a better mentor. And I've always said that mentoring is one of my 3 big jobs. So apparently I've fallen down on that lately. So I need to recommit myself to that point.
And it's going to be exciting to see you commit to that. We made a 1-year commitment to each other that's what you were going to do. And so I think it's going to be exciting to see where we are a year from now.
Yes. Hurry up and do it before I become senile and I can't remember what everything.
Get it all up, do the download.
Get it downloaded now so we can crash the hard drive.
Echo what you said about trust in the prior segment. I would say that the one thing EOS hasn't done for us is innately build trust. I think that there is some things that we've definitely grown closer as a leadership team, but also that it's like a foundation. If it's cracked and you don't really deal with that, then the bigger you grow and the more the firm gets to that next level, the cracks in the foundation become a lot more obvious. And so I think that was my takeaway from the 2-day was that we need to shore up the foundation in order to make sure we're really growing the firm on a solid, not on a house, not on sand. So if you have difficult personality conflicts or massive distrust on the team, I don't think, actually, EOS isn't designed to fix that. We talked about that in one of our prior podcasts. That's not EOS's job, though we do read books like 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Lencioni's work, that was assigned mandatory reading for your first year because it is so fundamental. I think it's almost like, okay, we got to get that out of the way to make sure that we actually can really work on the tactical, strategic things that will grow the firm. And
let's face it, we are a leadership team full of lawyers. And whoever accused lawyers of being, wilting flowers, you have a bunch of big, bold
egos,
personalities. I was going to say egos, if you want to throw ego in there. God knows that Marc doesn't have an ego at all.
Never, not at all. And you've had a lot of people that have been with you for a long time, either as law clerks or, I am actually the least tenured, quote unquote, tenured person on your leadership team currently. Though we've had people leave and come back, you have known me the least. That's true. Oh my gosh, that's actually shocking.
Although I spend more time with you than I spend with them by a long shot.
I don't know about all that.
I would say I spend at least 10 times as much time with you as I do with them.
Okay. Well, let's not make them jealous, Marc.
Well,
We're going to maybe
they don't listen to this podcast.
Any regrets doing EOS, Marc?
My only regret is maybe not starting the process sooner. I did mention that I dabbled with it in 19. I do think that was probably too early and it wasn't the right time. But, you came along in 20, so yes, we could have started in 21 or 22, which would have been given us, we'd be 2 years ahead of the curve if we would have started a little bit earlier. So I think that would have been the prime time to start. But, never say never. So we did start, and we've made it through the first year of EOS. So I'm pleased with the results. So that would be the only regret I could express about it.
We talked a little bit about our implementer. So in theory, it's a 2-year not in theory, it is actuality, a 2-year implementation. So we'll have Christine for 2 years. And you mentioned the cost. It's not
cheap. So, it usually costs, from what I have seen, it costs somewhere between 4 to 5 on the low end to 6 to 7-ish.
Yep.
On the high end, $6,000 to $7,000 per day. Of course, now you're meeting once a quarter for the most part, so it's $5,000 to $7,000 a quarter. And there's other interim steps in there as well. And I assume, I didn't even ask, but I assume since we did a 2-day that she charged double.
That is very true, sir.
So yes, it's not cheap. But you're paying for their expertise in guiding you and guiding the firm, and she has a whole list of questions to ask when we get stuck. I see her over there. She has this notebook, and she has all these topics. And then when we get to the issue on the various topics like cash flow, I know she's got all of these topics written down that are potential issues that we should address. So, she's done this a long time. So you're buying her wisdom and an experience. I think it's well worth it.
Well, and so because it's a year from now, we will in theory be done with our EOS implementation, whether we keep Christine or not. Obviously, a lot of firms, Craig's been with their implementer for many years, almost a decade, I think. So it's not unheard of to keep your implementer as that neutral third party after you're done with your quote unquote implementation. But where do you think we'll be in a year when we're done with our EOS implementation?
So when we're done with the EOS implementation, I kind of envision that we will continue on with Christine. I guess we haven't crossed that bridge yet. The way the system is set up is it's set up to where at the end of 2 years, then you can move forward and keep moving on with the EOS system without an implementer. I get to save the money. And that might be enticing to some people. To me, at least so far, it's been money well spent. So I kind of think that we probably will keep Christine on to have her continue as an implementation guru. Again, we haven't quite made that decision yet, but that's my feeling on it.
But envision for me, where do you think the firm's going to be in a year, having completed its 2-year journey?
Number one, I would think our plan and our rocks are going to get more and more defined and more attuned to what actually moves the needle. When you first start the system, you're putting out a lot of fires, and you're just fixing a lot of things that are broken.
Low-hanging fruit.
The low-hanging fruit. But as you move forward in the system, and I think we found this out this past week in Galveston, is that, once you start knocking off that low-hanging fruit, then you can start focusing on things that are more important, that really move the needle. So I think that's what's going to happen over time, is we're just going to become more and more focused on the big rocks.
Yeah. I think we're going to get more strategic and tactical, I guess. I've used those words repetitively this time. But I just think, it's going to only get better. Before
you can really get the boat moving, really start all rowing in the same direction, you got to fill a lot of holes in the hull of the boat. You got to patch the boat.
Yep.
And we spent the first year a lot of patching the holes in the boat.
Yep.
But now that I think we've gotten the holes in the boat patched, now we can all focus on finding those oars and getting all those oars moving in the same direction.
Exactly.
I love the metaphor. See,
you did really take.
I'm sure nobody's ever used that metaphor ever. I should trademark that.
All right, Marc. My final question for this episode. What do you wish you knew a year ago when you began our EOS journey, or what do you wish you had known? What do you wish you would know?
I guess I wish I would have known it would take a year to fix all the holes in the boat. Because I really thought, and that was really my frustration, I think, through the first half of the first year, was I was never satisfied with our quarterly rocks. I was never satisfied with the quarterly goals. I was always thinking, these are too small. We're not thinking big enough. we're just nibbling at the edges. And I guess what I've come to understand, especially since last week, is that we had a lot of small fires that we were fighting, and we needed to get those knocked out before we could really start focusing on the big picture. And maybe that would have been nice to have known a year ago, so I would have been a little bit more patient with the process. Because I am, my slogan, I want everything done yesterday.
Yep.
Yes, I want everything done yesterday, and I will say that I did get a little impatient. So
Only a little?
Little.
So this one's going to be a little selfish thing, but so I wish I had known how important the integrator role was going to be. I know that's a little selfish. So I will say, don't halfway do that decision. I guess is if you are on the fence about doing EOS, make sure you know. And even actually, when our first session together, she had us kind of write down a name.
We had a vote. We had an election.
We had to vote. Yeah.
Who was going to be we had to vote on who was going to be the integrator.
And I was sitting there thinking.
You won in a landslide.
Well, thankfully, because I was sitting there thinking, this is going to get real awkward. The next 7 hours are going to be really awkward if I don't get this one, because this one.
If you would have lost that election, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know. But obviously, I think so many of these things are obvious, but a year in, I will say that the visionary integrator relationship is so important. And so make sure you have those two relationships, or those two people in the right seat, right person, right, before you kind of move forward. Because, I guess we can tell them. I mean, Christine did tell us, it's like the success of this leadership team is following on both of us. And again, water for ducks, back for you. So really, it's like on me. Right. The success of our leadership team is on me.
It really is. You are the backbone. You are the structure behind it. And that would be my one key takeaway from this for everybody else, is if you do not have a solid number two, if you don't know who the integrator is going to be, don't do EOS. You're not ready for it.
Yeah, that's your next step, is not EOS.
Yeah. No, EOS, I think, will fail miserably if you don't have a consensus pick for who your integrator is going to be.
Yeah. And if it's the other flip where, because I was one of the our Atta cousins that I'm on a rope team with, it's just her and the visionary. They have some of their fractionals come in and sit in on some of their leadership team meetings. So if conversely all you have is a visionary and integrator, you still can do EOS, but you can't do EOS without the other two positions, right, is the way that I would put that. So any parting thoughts, Marc, on our 1 year into our EOS journey?
Well, so here's kind of the way I view it. I think you, as the integrator, have done a bang-up job, and all the success lies within you. I feel I'm kind of having a little bit of imposter syndrome when it comes to me being the visionary, because I feel that I'm not living up to my end of the bargain as being the visionary. So it's funny. So EOS has separate workshops for visionaries,
yes,
and they have separate workshops for integrators. And we've looked at that, and we're trying to figure out how to schedule it. I really, really, really want to go to the visionary workshop, because quite frankly, I feel that I'm failing in that job, and I need somebody to tell me how to do it.
I did well, and I think that that's another one of my takeaways from the 2-day, is that for just like the firm is leveling up, you and I are going to have to level up and like find some new skill sets, or I think we're both going to have to find either new, dare I say, Marc, emotional skills on managing and accountability. No? Or yeah, I know Marc's like deer in the headlights. But I do think that it's just
you're doing that IQ thing again.
Yep.
EQ.
EOS is going to challenge you, specifically your visionary and your integrator. Even if you have one, if you don't have one, don't do EOS yet, find that integrator. But also it's going to challenge you in the best way possible, I think, to continue to grow your skills as a leader. Oh, I get to do the outro?
You get to do the outro.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, but first I got to plug Ruby Powers again. Remember, power up your practice. Ruby Powers, I'm on it. Go find me on her podcast.
Well, listen, Marc.
Yes.
All right. And thank you, listeners, for listening to the Successful Barrister Podcast, where legal legends are made.
I'm Marc.
And I'm Diana. And together we're the dynamic duo of law. Remember to rate and review us. And if you enjoy, please tell your friends and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And find us on successfulbarrister.com and visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com.
That didn't sound like you read it at all.
You've had 30 years, Mark.
Bye.
Bye.